Track and Field for the Nintendo Entertainment System is a beloved classic that transformed the fast-paced excitement of Olympic-style sports into a fun and challenging video game. Released in 1985 by Konami, it was an adaptation of the arcade hit of the same name. The game stands out for its simple yet addictive gameplay that tested players' reflexes and endurance through a series of Olympic-inspired events. Originally released as an arcade game in 1983, Track and Field, known as Hyper Olympic in Japan, was developed by Konami and quickly became a sensation in arcades worldwide. The game's simple, competitive nature attracted players who wanted to test their reflexes and challenge their friends in Olympic-style events. It was one of the earliest games to combine sports with a rapid button-mashing mechanic, which soon became a signature element in many other sports titles of the time. After the game's massive success in the arcade, Konami decided to port the game to home consoles, including the NES in 1985. The NES version was an immediate hit, bringing the exhilarating experience of arcade gaming to the living room. This version faithfully captured the spirit of the original, with all the events and mechanics intact, while also optimizing the game for home console controls. The NES release of the game was important because it demonstrated the potential of sports games on home consoles at a time when platformers and adventure games dominated the market. While the NES hardware couldn't perfectly replicate the flashy visuals of the arcade machines, the game's core gameplay, focusing on speed, timing, and precision, remained just as engaging. Like most sports games, Track and Field doesn't have a traditional storyline, but it places players in the role of an Olympic athlete competing in a series of events to win gold medals. The premise revolves around participating in 6 different events, each inspired by real-world track and field competitions. Players must qualify for each event by reaching certain performance benchmarks, and those who perform exceptionally well can set new records and win medals. The focus of the game is on the thrill of competition, whether against the clock, computer-controlled athletes, or another player. The lack of narrative is compensated for by the sheer fun of pushing yourself to improve with each playthrough. This simplicity is part of what has kept the game appealing to gamers for decades. The gameplay is known for being fast-paced and action-packed. The game consists of 6 Olympic-inspired events, each requiring quick reflexes and precise button presses. The primary gameplay mechanic involves rapidly pressing the A and B buttons, or alternately tapping buttons on the arcade machine, to make your athlete run faster or jump farther. Here are the 6 events featured in the NES version. The 100-meter dash is one of the most straightforward events. Players must tap the A and B buttons as fast as possible to make their athlete run down the track. The goal is to complete the race in the shortest time possible, making it a test of raw, button-mashing speed. In the long jump, players need to time their button presses to get a running start, and then jump at the perfect moment. The longer the player holds the jump button, the higher the athlete will leap. Releasing it at the right time will determine the distance of the jump. The key to success in this event is balancing speed with the right angle of takeoff. In the Javelin Throw, players again mash buttons to build speed before throwing the javelin at the correct angle. The longer the button is held down, the higher the angle of the throw, but timing is crucial, as a poor angle can cause the javelin to fall short. Precision and timing are critical to landing a record-breaking throw. This event combines speed with agility, as players must race down the track while also timing their jumps to clear the hurdles. The A and B buttons are used to build speed, and the jump button must be pressed just before each hurdle to avoid crashing. Quick reflexes are essential for clearing all the hurdles without losing momentum. In the hammer throw, players must rotate their athlete by mashing buttons and releasing the hammer at the optimal time to send it flying as far as possible. The trick lies in releasing the throw at just the right moment to achieve maximum distance while ensuring the throw stays within the boundaries of the field. The high jump requires players to build speed and then execute a perfect jump by timing their button presses. Like in the long jump, the angle of the jump plays a key role, but in this event, the goal is to clear a progressively higher bar, making it more difficult as the height increases. Each event presents its own challenges, requiring players to master both button mashing and timing. As the game progresses, the difficulty ramps up, with stricter qualifying standards for each event. The game also featured a 2-player competitive mode, where players could go head-to-head in all 6 events. This mode significantly increased the game's replay value, as it introduced a layer of real-time competition. friends would challenge each other to see who could mash buttons the fastest or land the perfect throw, creating a social and competitive atmosphere that made track and field a favorite at parties and gaming sessions. Track and field is one of the earliest games to popularize the button mashing mechanic. This mechanic became a staple in many sports games that followed, from decathlon titles to future Olympic-themed video games. Players would often use a variety of techniques, including rapid finger taps, or even using objects like spoons to increase their button pressing speed. All of the events are based on real Olympic sports, which helped to ground the game in familiar territory for players. The game was inspired by the growing global excitement surrounding the Olympic Games during the 1980s, particularly after the success of the 1984 Los Angeles Olympics. The original track and field arcade cabinet was designed with a unique control scheme featuring 2 buttons for running and a 3rd button for jumping or throwing. Players would often use rapid finger tapping or sliding techniques to maximize their speed, which contributed to the arcade version's reputation for intense competition. The game was a big hit in arcades, especially in Japan and North America, where its competitive nature and ability to set high scores became a draw for players. Many players developed unique techniques for pressing the buttons faster. Some would slide objects like pencils or coins across the controller to tap the buttons rapidly, while others found ways to alternate fingers in a rhythm that sped up their presses. These tricks became part of the game's competitive culture, especially in arcades. The success of the game led to a series of sequels and spin-offs, including Track and Field 2 and Hypersports, which expanded the number of events and further refined the gameplay. These titles carried on the spirit of the original, keeping its fast-paced, button-mashing mechanics alive throughout the years. The game was compatible with certain NES accessories, such as the NES Advantage joystick, which some players found easier to use for rapid button mashing. The accessory allowed for turbo functions, which gave players an edge in speed-based events. This added another layer of strategy for competitive players who sought to maximize their scores. Track and Field is considered a pioneering title in the sports game genre. Its addictive, fast-paced gameplay and competitive multiplayer mode made it a standout title in the early days of the NES. It also paved the way for future Olympic and sports-themed games that would adopt similar mechanics. The game's success helped solidify Konami's reputation as a developer of high-quality, innovative games, and it contributed to the popularity of sports games on home consoles. The button-mashing mechanic introduced this game became a defining feature of many future sports titles, from Olympic-themed games to action-packed decathlon simulators. Despite its simplicity, the game captured the essence of sports competition, providing players with a high-energy, skill-testing experience that has stood the test of time. Even decades after its release, the game continues to be celebrated by retro gamers and remains a popular title in Konami's vast catalog of classic games. Track and Field for the NES is a testament to the lasting appeal of simple yet challenging gameplay. Its button-mashing mechanics and Olympic-inspired events captured the spirit of competition and athleticism, while its multiplayer mode provided hours of fun and rivalry for friends. The game's legacy endures as one of the most iconic sports games of the 8-bit era, and it remains a must-play for anyone looking to experience the thrill of retro gaming. Whether you're a fan of sports games or a collector of NES classics, Track and Field stands as a shining example of how early video games could deliver excitement, competition, and memorable gameplay through simple yet effective mechanics. It's a game that rewards practice, patience, and speed, offering a true test of skill for anyone brave enough to go for the gold.